You know that feeling when your entire world shifts in a single heartbeat? When everything you thought you knew about yourself, about someone else, gets rewritten in an instant, so quiet you almost miss it? That's what happened to me on a rainy Thursday night in October. And it all started because my best friend fell asleep. My name is Adrian. This is the story of how I fell in love with the person I thought I knew better than anyone, and how one vulnerable moment shattered every wall I'd built around my heart. The coffee shop smelled like cinnamon and rain-soaked wool. I'd claimed our usual corner table by the window, watching droplets race down the glass while my laptop screen glowed with half-finished architectural renderings. Seattle in autumn was a symphony of gray, and I'd learned to find beauty in the melancholy. My phone buzzed. "Ethan, running late. Client meeting went long. Order me the usual." I smiled despite myself. Ethan, more perpetually late, perpetually apologetic, and somehow always forgiven. We'd been best friends since sophomore year of college. When he'd walked into our shared dorm room with a guitar case, covered in travel stickers and a smile that could light up the darkest Seattle winter. That was 6 years ago. 6 years of late-night conversations and road trips of inside jokes and comfortable silences. 6 years of me pretending I didn't notice the way my heart stuttered when he laughed, or how my skin burned when our shoulders touched. I ordered his drink-hand oat milk latte with an extra shot, because Ethan ran on caffeine, and optimism and returned to my renderings. I was 3 months into my first major project at Morrison & Associates, designing a community center for Capitol Hill. The irony wasn't lost on me, creating a safe space for the LGBTQ+ community while hiding in my own carefully constructed closet. Well, not entirely closet. I'd come out to my family 2 years ago, right after graduation. My mom cried, my dad got quiet, and my older sister Maya hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. They were trying, in their own imperfect way. But Ethan didn't know. The bell above the door chimed. And there he was. Dark hair plastered to his forehead, green eyes bright despite the exhaustion written across his face. He wore a navy peacoat over his graphic designer uniform of band t-shirt and dark jeans. And he was breathtaking in that effortless way that made my chest ache. I'm sorry, he said, collapsing into the chair across from me. Water droplets scattered across the table. Veronica wanted to discuss brand synergy for 45 minutes. I don't even know what that means. It means she's paying. You enough that you smile and nod, I said, sliding his latte across the table. You're a lifesaver. He wrapped his hands around the cup, and I forced myself to look away from the elegant movement of his fingers. What are you working on? The Capitol Hill project? Can't decide if this entrance feels welcoming or institutional. Ethan leaned forward, studying my screen with the focused intensity he brought to everything. This close, I could smell his column something, woodsy and clean, that had become synonymous with safety in my mind. More glass, he said finally. You want people to see the community inside. His transparency is invitation. He got it immediately. He always did. We fell into our familiar rhythm-y sketching, him working on his own laptop, occasionally stealing bites of the blueberry scone I'd ordered. The coffee shop hummed with ambient conversation and indie folk music, rain drumming a steady rhythm against the windows. This was my favorite version of life. Ethan across from me, creativity flowing, the outside world reduced to atmospheric noise. Around 9, the crowd thinned. The barista began wiping down tables with the pointed efficiency of someone ready to close. Want to head to my place? I asked. Finish up there? Ethan nodded, already packing his laptop. Your couch is better than mine anyway. My apartment was a 10-minute walk through rain-slicked streets, past closed boutiques and glowing restaurants. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. One of the gifts of our friendship was the comfort of silence, the way we could exist in parallel without constant conversation. I loved that about him. I loved a lot of things about him. My studio apartment was small, but well-designed. What you'd expect from an architect with limited funds and unlimited opinions about spatial efficiency. Exposed brick, floating shelves, crammed with books and succulents. Couch that had cost 3 months of savings because I believed in investing in the places where you spend your time. Ethan immediately claimed his spot on the left side, towing off his wet sneakers. I grabbed his beers from the fridge and IPA for him, A Pilsner for me and settled on the right side, leaving the middle cushion between us like always. "The dating app experiment going?" Ethan asked, opening his laptop. My stomach clenched. Deleted them again. They're exhausting. Everyone's looking for something I can't figure out how to give them. It wasn't entirely a lie.
You had bet on the app, Tinder, Hinge, even Grindr, for one anxiety-inducing week.
But every conversation felt like a performance. Every date a reminder that the person I actually wanted was sitting on my couch every Thursday night. Completely unavailable. Ethan frowned. That little crease appearing between his eyebrows that I'd memorized like my own reflection. "You're too hard on yourself. You're smart, funny, talented, and apparently terrible at dating. You just haven't found your person yet." He said it with such casual certainty, like it was inevitable. Like he couldn't imagine a world where someone wouldn't be lucky to love me. If only he knew he was describing himself. We worked in comfortable silence for another hour. I refined the community center's entrance, adding the transparency Ethan suggested. He tweaked whatever branding project was consuming his week. Rain continued its assault on the windows, the city settling into its nighttime rhythm. Around 11, I noticed Ethan had stopped typing. His head was tilted back against the couch, eyes closed, beer bottle loose in his hand. I carefully extracted the bottle before it could spill. Setting it on the coffee table, he looked different in sleep, softer, younger. His usual caffeinated energy dissipated, revealing something vulnerable underneath. A strand of hair fell across his forehead, and I had to physically restrain myself from brushing it away. I should wake him, send him home. Maintain the careful boundaries that kept our friendship intact and my heart protected. Instead, I whispered, "Hey, you okay?" His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and heavy. Just rest for a minute." Then he did something that rewrote my entire existence. He shifted closer, closing the gap between us, and let his head drop onto my shoulder. The weight of him was both nothing and everything. Through my t-shirt, I could feel the warmth of his cheek, the gentle pressure of his temple against my collarbone. His breathing was slow and steady, each exhale a soft brush against my neck. I stopped breathing. I stopped thinking. The entire universe condensed into the point where his body met mine. This wasn't the first time we'd been physically close. We'd shared beds on road trips, fallen asleep on each other after long nights, navigated the casual intimacy of close friendship. But something about this moment felt different, more vulnerable, or real. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending. Slowly, carefully, I let my head rest against the top of his, breathing in the scent of his shampoos, something citrusy and clean. My heart was hammering so hard I was certain he could feel it, but he didn't move. Just settled deeper against me with a small, contented sound that I felt more than heard. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time became irrelevant, measured only in the rise and fall of his breathing, the gradual relaxation of his muscles as sleep pulled him deeper. And somewhere in that suspended moment, I stopped fighting the truth I'd been avoiding for 6 years. I was in love with Ethan more. Desperately, completely, irrevocably in love with him. The realization didn't crash over me like a wave. It was gentler than that, a slow dawn, light spilling across a landscape I'd been too afraid to examine. All those years of explaining away the butterflies, of convincing myself that what I felt was just deep friendship, of dating people who could never quite measure up to an impossible standard, it was him. It had always been him. My hand, moving of its own accord, came to rest lightly on his arm. He shifted slightly, pressing closer, and I let myself have this one stolen moment of honesty, even if he'd never know what it meant. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming harder against the windows. Inside, in the warm glow of my standing lamp, I held my best friend and felt my carefully constructed walls crumbling. What was I supposed to do now? How did you tell someone they'd been the main character in your story for 6 years, and they didn't even know they'd auditioned for the role? Ethan's breathing deepened, and I knew he was truly asleep now. His face in repose held an innocence that made my chest ache. I studied him like I was memorizing a masterpiece, the angle of his jaw, the dark sweep of his eyelashes, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood skateboarding accident. I knew his stories. I knew his dreams of opening his own design studio, his complicated relationship with his father, his habit of reorganizing his apartment when stressed. I knew he took his coffee with oat milk because dairy made him break out, that he'd watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy 17 times, that he volunteered at a youth art program every other Saturday. I knew everything except whether he could ever see me. It's the way I saw him. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, Maya, texting to confirm brunch on Sunday. I ignored it, unwilling to move and disturb this perfect, terrible moment, because that's what it was. Perfect and terrible. Perfect, because for once, I wasn't hiding. Terrible, because tomorrow, I'd have to go back to pretending. Back to being best friend Adrian, supportive and safe and utterly invisible as anything more, unless... The thought formed slowly, dangerously. What if I didn't go back? What if this moment his head on my shoulder? My heart cracked open was the universe giving me permission to be brave. Ethan stirred, making that small sound again, and my resolve wavered. I couldn't risk this friendship. It was the most important relationship in my life, the steady ground beneath my feet. Telling him the truth could ruin everything, but wasn't I already ruined? Wasn't I already sacrificing my own heart to preserve a friendship built on half-truths? I didn't have answers. All I had was the weight of him against me, the rain outside, and the terrifying possibility that everything was about to change. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what needed to happen. I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the disorienting realization that I wasn't alone. Ethan and I had shifted during the night. Sprawling across my couch in a tangle of limbs, his head was still on my shoulder, but now my arm was wrapped around him, his hand resting on my chest. We fit together like puzzle pieces, like this was something we'd done 1,000 times. Except we hadn't, not like this. My first instinct was panic. I needed to move before he woke up. Before this became awkward. Before the careful facade I'd maintained for 6 years shattered in the harsh light of day. But I didn't move. Instead, I let myself have just a few more stolen minutes, memorizing the way his weight felt against me, the soft puff of his breath against my neck. This might be all I'd ever have, and I was selfish enough to take it. Ethan stirred, consciousness creeping back in stages. His fingers flexed against my chest, and I felt the moment he realized where he was, the slight tension that entered his body, the sharp intake of breath. But he didn't pull away. "Morning," he mumbled, voice rough with sleep. "Morning." My own voice was carefully casual, betraying nothing of the emotional earthquake happening inside me. "Sorry, I should have woken you up. Sent you home." "No," he finally lifted his head, blinking against the sunlight, his hair adorably disheveled. "This is my fault. I was just so exhausted, and your couch is really comfortable." And he trailed off, and for just a second, I could have sworn I saw something flicker across his face. Confusion, maybe, or something softer. But then he was moving, creating distance, and the moment passed. "Coffee?" I asked, standing up before I could do something stupid like pull him back. I think my soul left my body somewhere around hour 3 of yesterday's meeting. I busied myself in the kitchen, grateful for something to do with my hands. The familiar ritual of making coffee, grinding beans, heating water. The gentle gurgle of the pour-over gave me time to reconstruct my defenses. By the time I returned with 2 mugs, Ethan had folded the blanket we'd apparently pulled over ourselves at some point during the night. He was checking his phone, scrolling with the focused intensity of someone avoiding eye contact. "Anything important?" I asked, handing him his mug. "Just my sister. She wants to know if I'm bringing anyone to her Halloween party next weekend." He looked up, that familiar grin sliding into place. "Want to be my platonic +1? Fair warning, she goes hard on the costume requirement." My heart did that stupid flutter thing it always did when he smiled at me. "Sure. What are we thinking?" "Mario and Luigi." "Salt and pepper shakers?" "Duo costumes." He raised an eyebrow. "Someone might think we're together." The word hung in the air between us, loaded with possibilities that probably only existed in my imagination. Would that be so terrible? I asked before I could stop myself. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of something I couldn't quite read. I mean, no? You're a catch, Adrian. Anyone would be lucky too. He stopped abruptly, taking a long sip of coffee. Anyway, we could do something classic. What about Batman and Robin? The moment passed and I let it coward that I was. I'm not wearing tights. Your loss. I look amazing in tights. We fell back into easy banter, and if Ethan noticed I was quieter than usual, he didn't mention it. He finished his coffee, gathered his things, and was at the door when he paused. Hey, Adrian? Yeah, thanks for letting me crash. I slept better than I have in weeks. His smile was soft, genuine. You always make everything feel ... easier. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving me standing in my apartment with a racing heart and absolutely no idea what to do with these feelings that were too big to contain. The next few days passed in a blur of work and overthinking. I threw myself into the community center project, refining details until my boss, Margaret, physically removed my mouse and told me to go home. It's beautiful. Adrian, she said, studying the latest renderings on my screen, you've really captured something special here. This feels like a space people will want to claim as their own. That's the goal, I said. A place where people can be themselves without apology. Margaret, 60-something and sharp as a tack, gave me a knowing look. That's important. Everyone deserves that. I wondered if she suspected. Margaret had been openly gay for decades, had fought battles I couldn't imagine. There was a photo on her desk, her and her wife at their wedding, both in elegant white suits, both radiating joy. Can I ask you something? The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought. How did you know? That your wife was the one? Margaret smiled, settling into the chair beside me. Well, that's a big question for a Friday afternoon. But I'll tell you what I told my nephew when he asked me the same thing. I knew because she made me want to be braver. Not brave for her, brave for myself. She made me feel like the truest version of myself was worth fighting for. The truest version of myself. The version that loved Ethan more and was terrified to say it out loud. What if being brave means risking everything? I asked quietly. But then you have to decide what everything really means. Is it everything? Or is it just a beautiful lie you've been telling yourself to avoid risk? She squeezed my shoulder. Go home, Adrian, and maybe be a little braver this weekend. Saturday morning. Maya showed up at my apartment with bagels and her signature blend of sisterly concern and brutal honesty. You look terrible, she announced. Breezing past me into the kitchen. Good morning to you too. I'm serious. You have that look. The one you get when you're spiraling. She pulled cream cheese and lox from her bag with the efficiency of someone who'd planned this intervention. What's going on? I could have lied. Should have lied. But Maya had been my safe harbor since childhood, the person who'd held my hand through coming out and every heartbreak since. I'm in love with Ethan. She didn't even look surprised. I know. What do you mean, you know? Adrian, I've known since college. The way you look at him, the way you light up when he texts, it's not exactly subtle. She handed me a bagel. What I don't know is why you're torturing yourself instead of telling him, because he's my best friend. Because if I tell him and he doesn't feel the same way, I lose him. And I can't, my voice cracked. I can't lose him, Maya. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was gentler. But you're losing yourself. You're so busy protecting what you have that you can't see you don't really have it. Not fully. You're living in this half space, and it's killing you. What if I tell him and everything changes? Everything's already changing, Adrian. You think you can keep going like this? Pretending you're okay watching him date other people, being his emotional support, while slowly dying inside. She grabbed my hand. You deserve more than scraps. You deserve the whole damn meal. He's never shown any sign that he hasn't he? Maya interrupted. From what you've told me, he's always choosing you. Thursday nights, road trips, that time he canceled a date to help you move. Maybe he's just as scared as you are. Ethan's not gay. Has he told you that? I opened my mouth and realized I had no answer. We'd never explicitly talked about sexuality. I'd come out to my family, but never directly to Ethan Heed. Just absorbed the information through context. Through the fact that I started mentioning the guys I was seeing, and he'd never... actually, now that I thought about it. Ethan rarely talked about his dating life. There'd been a few women over the years, casual mentions, but nothing serious. Nothing that lasted. See? Maya said, reading my expression. You're making assumptions. And maybe you're right. Maybe he's straight, and this goes nowhere. But maybe, just maybe, you're wrong. And if there's even a chance, don't you owe it to yourself to find out? It's not that simple. Love never is. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for. We ate our bagels in silence, and I thought about Margaret's words. About being brave. About the truest version of myself. The version that loved Ethan more and was tired of hiding it. Sunday evening. I was drafting and deleting the same text message for the 20th time when my phone rang. Ethan's name lit up the screen. Hey, I answered, trying to sound normal. Hey yourself. Random question. Are you free right now? Yeah, why? I'm at Discovery Park. I know it's last minute, but I could really use some company. Bring a jacket. It's getting cold. 20 minutes later, I found him at the South Overlook, silhouetted against the sunset-painted sky. The Olympics rose in the distance, purple shadows against orange and pink clouds. The sound of the waves below was a steady rhythm, eternal and calming. Thanks for coming, he said as I approached. He looked different, something vulnerable in the set of his shoulders. The way he was hugging his arms around himself despite the heavy jacket he wore. Always. What's going on? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. I had coffee with my dad today. I winced. Ethan's relationship with his father was complicated, loving, but strained, full of unspoken expectations and disappointment. He's getting remarried, Ethan continued. 6 months after the divorce, and he kept talking about how happy he is, how he's finally found his person. A life's too short not to go after what you really want. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The whole time I'm sitting there thinking about how I've been living the exact opposite. Playing it safe, keeping people at arm's length, convincing myself I'm content when I'm really just... scared. My heart was pounding. Scared of what? Of wanting something I might not be allowed to have. He finally looked at me, and there was something raw in his expression. Of losing the most important person in my life, because I can't figure out how to be honest about what I feel. The world tilted. The sound of the waves faded, replaced by the roar of blood in my ears. Ethan, let me finish. He took a shaky breath. That night on your couch? When I fell asleep. I wasn't actually asleep. Not at first. I was awake when I put my head on your shoulder. I was awake when you touched my arm. And I've been thinking about that moment for 5 days straight, trying to figure out what it meant, and if I imagined the way you were holding me like I was something precious. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The truth is, Adrian, I've been in love with you since junior year. Since that night, you stayed up until 3 in the morning helping me finish my portfolio, existing on nothing but terrible coffee and determination. Since you looked at me with those eyes that see everything and said, you're going to do amazing things. And I've been too terrified to say anything because you're my best friend. And I thought you could never see me that way. I started, but words failed me. 6 years of longing, of hiding, of careful pretense, and here he was, saying everything I'd been too afraid to say. You don't have to respond, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. Because my dad's right about one thing. Life's too short to not go after what you really want. And what I want, his voice broke. What I've always wanted is you. The sunset painted him in gold and amber, and I'd never seen anything more beautiful. You're an idiot, I said, and his face fell. You're an idiot because I've been in love with you for 6 years too. Since the day you walked into our dorm room and smiled at me like I was someone worth knowing. Since every Thursday night and every road trip and every moment, I pretended my heart wasn't breaking because I thought I could never have you. Adrian, I was awake too, I said. That night, I was awake and terrified and happier than I'd been in years because for once, I wasn't pretending. We stood there, 3 feet apart. The space between us, charged with 6 years of unspoken longing. The sun was setting behind him, painting the sky in impossible colors. And I thought about all the moments that had led her all the almost confessions and careful touches, the safe distance we'd maintained while slowly dying from the separation. "So what do we do now?" he asked quietly. I closed the distance between us, my heart hammering, and reached for his hand. His fingers intertwined with mine like they'd been designed for exactly this, and the rightness of it nearly brought me to my knees. I said, "We stop being idiots." And then I kissed him, kissing Ethan. More was nothing like I'd imagined, and I'd imagined it approximately 10,000 times over 6 years. It was better. His lips were soft and uncertain at first, both of us tentative, like we were handling something fragile and irreplaceable. The salt air from the sound mixed with the taste of him. And when his hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone, I felt 6 years of longing condense into this single perfect moment. We broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together. Breathing uneven, that was Ethan started. "Yeah," I agreed, because there weren't words adequate for whatever had just happened. "Can we do it again?" I laughed, the sound carrying pure joy, and pulled him back. This kiss was different, deeper, more confident. His hands slid into my hair, and I wrapped my arms around his waist, eliminating every inch of space between us. 6 years of careful distance, obliterated in seconds. When we finally broke apart, the sun had fully set, leaving us in twilight. Ethan's eyes were bright, his lips swollen, his smile so wide it had to hurt. "I can't believe we've been this stupid for 6 years," he said. "Speak for yourself." I was protecting our friendship by slowly dying inside. It seemed reasonable at the time. He laughed, pressing his face into my neck, and I held him close. Still half convinced this was a dream I'd wake from in my empty apartment. "What do we tell people?" he asked, voice muffled against my shoulder. "That we finally figured out what everyone else apparently already knew?" He pulled back, eyebrows raised. "What?" "My sister said she's known since college." I'm guessing we weren't as subtle as we thought. My sister asked me point blank 3 months ago if we were dating. I told her we were just friends, and she laughed at me. He shook his head. "We really are idiots, the best kind of idiots." We stayed at the Overlook until the stars emerged, talking about everything and nothing. About the years of misunderstanding, the missed signals, the moments when we'd almost said something. About the future we could finally imagine together. "I'm nervous," Ethan admitted as we walked back to my car, hands linked. "I've never done this before. Been with a guy. Been with you. What if I'm terrible at it?" "Ethan." I stopped, turning to face him. "You've been my favorite person for 6 years. You make everything better just by existing. You're not going to be terrible at this. But what if I kissed him again, softer this time, trying to pour 6 years of certainty into the gesture?" When I pulled back, he looked slightly dazed. "Okay," he said. "That's a good argument." The next 2 weeks existed in a bubble of discovery. We took it slow, or as slow as two people who'd been orbiting each other for 6 years could manage. Long conversations over dinner, learning the shape of each other's mouths, figuring out this new dimension of intimacy while maintaining the friendship that had always been our foundation. Ethan was tentative at first, nervous about getting it right. But slowly he relaxed into us. Movie nights transformed as we learned how to share space with this new permission to touch. His head on my chest, my fingers running through his hair. Both of us half watching whatever was on screen because we were too distracted by the miracle of finally getting to do this. I spent so many Thursdays sitting on that couch trying not to stare at you. I confessed one night, tracing patterns on his shoulder. "I know. I could feel you not staring. You knew?" I hoped. He tilted his head to look up at me. But hope felt dangerous. Easier to pretend I was imagining things? We lost so much time, or we took exactly the time we needed. Maybe we had to be friends first. Maybe this wouldn't work if we'd rushed it. It was probably right. What we'd built over 6 years, the trust, the understanding, The deep knowledge of each other was the foundation that made this work. We weren't learning each other from scratch. We were adding new dimensions to something already solid. Still, there were challenges. Ethan had never been with a man before. While he navigated that with his characteristic openness and enthusiasm, there were moments of uncertainty. Questions about what this meant for his identity. How to exist in this new space. "I don't know if I'm gay or bi or something else entirely," he said one night. Curled against me on my couch now, the geography of it forever changed. "All I know is that I love you." "Is that enough?" "More than enough," I assured him. "You don't have to figure out labels right now. Or ever, if you don't want to. You get to define yourself. What if other gay guys think I'm not gay enough? Or straight people think I'm too gay? What if I don't fit anywhere?" I recognized the fear in his voice, the same fear I'd carried for years. The sense of existing in liminal spaces, never quite belonging. "Then we'll figure it out together," I said. "And for what it's worth, you fit perfectly right here." Maya's reaction to our news was characteristically dramatic. She screamed when I told her over Sunday brunch. Several other patrons turned to stare. "Do you know how painful it's been watching you to dance around each other? I'm billing you for the therapy I needed to cope with your emotional constipation." "You're not in therapy." "I should be. After dealing with you too." Ethan's sister, Chloe, was equally enthusiastic. We met her for dinner, our first public appearance as a couple, and she spent the first 5 minutes of the meal alternating between laughing and saying "I told you so" with increasing volume. "I owe my wife $50, she announced. "She bet you'd figure it out by the end of the year. I thought it'd take at least another 6 months." "Glad our relationship could settle your gambling debts," Ethan said dryly, but he was smiling, his hand resting on my thigh under the table with casual ownership that made my heart race. Work was more complicated. I'd been out at Morrison & Associates since I started. But watching Ethan navigate his own coming out to coworkers, clients, his father reminded me what a privilege my earlier disclosure had been. He handled it with grace, though I could see the toll it took. "My dad asked if I was sure," he told me one night, voice tight with frustration. "Like being in love with you is a phase I'm going through. Like I haven't spent 6 years figuring this out." "What did you say?" "That I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He looked at me, vulnerability and strength mixed in his expression. "Because I haven't. This is the realest thing I've ever felt." I pulled him close, wishing I could shield him from every uncomfortable conversation, every moment of doubt from people who couldn't understand. But I couldn't. All I could do was be there, steady and certain, reminding him that what we had was worth every difficult moment. Halloween arrived, and Chloe's party was everything she'd promised: elaborate decorations, themed cocktails, and mandatory costumes. We'd finally settled on a duo. Costume: Ethan as a vampire, because of course he had the bone structure for it, and me as his vampire hunter. The irony of the costume choice wasn't lost on US 6 years of hunting something I was afraid to catch, now willingly caught. "You look ridiculous," Ethan said when he saw me. Grinning at my fake steaks and holy water. "You look hot." I'm literally wearing plastic fangs. Still hot. The party was packed with Chloe's eclectic friend, group artists, and musicians. Tech workers and activists, the beautiful chaos of Seattle's creative class. We spent the evening in that pleasant social buzz, talking to strangers and friends, but always drifting back to each other. Around midnight, someone started karaoke. Predictably, Chloe immediately signed Ethan up. "You're evil," he told her. "You love me," she countered. "Besides, this is your chance to serenade your boyfriend." The word still gave me a little thrill. Boyfriend. Such a simple word for something so monumental. Ethan took the microphone with the resigned expression of someone who knew resistance was futile. "The opening notes of your song by Elton John filled the apartment." He locked eyes with me. He wasn't a great singer, good enough, but not professional. But watching him up there, fake vampire fangs, making him lisp slightly on certain words, singing this classic love song directly to me with zero embarrassment, I fell in love with him all over again. When he finished, The room erupted in applause. He bounded back to me, breathless and smiling. "That was for you," he said unnecessarily. "I know." I kissed him, not caring who saw. "You're ridiculous. You love me. I really do." The real test came in December, when Ethan's father invited us both to his wedding. "You don't have to come," Ethan said, staring at the invitation like it might bite him. "I know family stuff isn't." "I'm coming," I interrupted. "If you want me there, I'm there. It might be awkward. My dad's still adjusting to the whole my son is in a relationship with his best friend thing, and we'll be awkward together." The wedding was in Portland, a small ceremony at a boutique hotel. Ethan's father, Richard, was polite but distant, clearly still processing his son's relationship. But his fiancée, now wife Linda, was warm and welcoming, pulling me into conversation about architecture when she learned what I did. "Richard mentioned you're designing a community center," she said over dinner, "for Capitol Hill." "Yes, ma'am. It's been an incredible project, trying to create space that honors the neighborhood's history while looking toward the future." "That sounds wonderful." "You know, I volunteer with an LGBTQ+ youth organization. We're always looking for safe spaces for our kids. Would you be open to discussing potential partnerships?" We exchanged information, and I felt some of the tension ease. This building community, creating safety, was why I'd become an architect. Having someone understand that, it felt like validation. Later, during the reception, Richard approached us at the bar. "Adrian," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Can I speak with you? Alone?" Ethan tensed beside me, but I squeezed his hand. "Of course." Stepped onto the hotel's terrace. Portland's city lights spread out below us. Richard was quiet for a long moment, and I prepared myself for the worst. "I owe you an apology," he finally said. "That wasn't what I'd expected. When Ethan told me about you too, I reacted poorly. I asked questions I shouldn't have asked, expressed doubts that weren't fair." He looked at me directly. "But watching you tonight, the way you look at my son, the way he lights up around you, I recognize that. That's how Linda makes me feel. Like I'm my best self." My throat tightened. "I spent 25 years in a marriage that was comfortable but not quite right," Richard continued. "It took losing it to realize what I'd been missing. Ethan is braver than I was, and he's lucky to have found what I spent 50 years searching for. I'm the lucky one," I said quietly. "Take care of him. That's all I ask. Every day. I promise." When I returned inside, Ethan was waiting anxiously by the bar. I wrapped my arms around him, pulling him close. He asked, "Everything's perfect." The community center was completed in March, 9 months after I'd started the project. The grand opening was a beautiful chaos. Local artists, community leaders, families with kids, couples of all types flooding through the space I'd designed. Ethan stood beside me, his hand in mine, watching people claim the space as their own. "You did it," he said softly. "You created something beautiful." Margaret found us near the end of the event, her wife beside her. "Adrian, this is magnificent," she said, gesturing at the space. But more importantly, she looked at Ethan and back to me. "You look happy." "Really happy. I am," I said, and meant it completely. That night. Back at our apartment, Ethan had officially moved in 2 months prior. Because at a certain point, it was silly to maintain 2 places, we collapsed on our couch, exhausted and content. "Remember when this was your couch and I was just visiting?" Ethan asked, his head on my shoulder in the position that had started everything. "Remember when we spent 6 years being idiots? Best 6 years of idiocy ever." I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the familiar scent of him. "What do you think the next 6 years will bring?" "Hopefully less pining and more kissing." Sounds like a solid plan. We sat in comfortable silence, the city humming beyond our windows. This couch had witnessed our friendship, the beginning of our love story, countless Thursday nights of existing in parallel. Now it was witnessing our future, whatever shape that took.
"Adrian,"
Ethan said softly, "Yeah, I love you. In case I haven't said it enough today, you've said it 17 times. But I'll never get tired of hearing it.
Good.
Because I plan on saying it approximately 10,000 more times." "Only 10,000? Per year." I laughed, the sound full of joy, and pulled him closer. Outside, the world continued its complicated dance, people finding each other and losing each other. Hearts breaking and mending, the eternal human struggle to connect. But in this moment, on this couch, I had everything I needed. The person I'd loved for 6 years, who'd loved me back just as long. The courage to be honest that we'd finally found. The future stretching ahead of us, full of possibility. It had all started because he fell asleep on my shoulder. One vulnerable moment that changed everything. Sometimes the biggest transformations come in the quietest moments. Sometimes love isn't a grand gesture, but a head resting on a shoulder, a hand held in the dark. The courage to finally say the truth you've been carrying for years. Sometimes you spend 6 years orbiting someone, afraid to get too close, only to realize that the gravity pulling you together was always stronger than the fear, pushing you apart. And sometimes, just sometimes, the happy ending you thought was impossible was actually waiting for you all along, patient and certain. On the left side of a comfortable couch, 1 year later, the Thursday night tradition continued, but now it looked different. We still claimed our usual spots on the couch, him on the left, me on the right, but the space between us was gone. Had been gone since that October night when everything changed. Ethan was sketching ideas for his new design studio. He'd finally taken the leap 3 months ago, leaving his corporate job to build something of his own. I was reviewing plans for my next project, a youth center in partnership with Linda's organization. "Hey," he said suddenly, looking up from his sketchbook. "Hey, yourself, remember when we were idiots?" I smiled, setting down my work. Vaguely, "I'm glad we stopped being idiots." "Me too." He shifted closer, and I wrapped my arm around him, the most natural movement in the world now. His head found its place on my shoulder, exactly where it belonged. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." Outside, rain began to fall, Seattle in autumn, exactly as it had been that night. But inside, we were warm and together, building a life from the friendship we'd almost lost because we were too afraid to ask for more. Sometimes the best love stories are the ones that take their time. The ones that build foundations before walls, friendship before romance, trust before vulnerability. And sometimes the happy ending isn't an ending at all. It's just the beginning.